Me, 32 at the time, working as a logistics optimization specialist for a decent-sized company. Let's call it Streamline Logistics. Not a glamorous job. No one understands what I do. Basically, I look at incredibly complex systems of trucks, warehouses, and delivery routes, and I find ways to make them cheaper and faster. It's a numbers game. Pure data, pure logic. I was good at it. Very good. My boss, the operations director, was a typical middle management guy. A bit of a coward, hated confrontation, but he liked me because my work made his department look fantastic. As long as the numbers were green, he left me alone. The work culture was fine. A little boring, very corporate, but professional. You did your job, you did it well, you got rewarded. Simple. The company had just landed a massive client, Megacorp. Their supply chain was a complete disaster. I spent about 2 solid months buried in their data, barely sleeping. I redesigned their entire North American distribution network. The result? I saved them something like $5 million in the first quarter alone. Director was ecstatic. I got a big bonus. I was the golden boy of the department. Life was stable. I had my routine. Go to work, solve puzzles with data, go home. Then, sometime in the spring, the company decided it needed a cultural shakeup. We get an all-hands email from the director announcing our new senior HR business partner, Yvonne. The email was full of the usual corporate buzzwords: dynamic synergy, forward-thinking leadership, fostering an inclusive ecosystem. My eyes glazed over before I finished the first paragraph. A few days later, we have the official introductory meeting. Yvonne stands at the front of the conference room. She has that specific sterile look of a career HR person. Everything is neat, pressed, and completely devoid of personality. She gives a speech. It's a masterclass in saying absolutely nothing with the maximum number of words. She talks about her vision for the company's culture. It's about moving beyond outdated metrics of success and embracing a more holistic, people-centric paradigm. She mentions psychological safety at least a dozen times. She wants to empower marginalized voices and deconstruct traditional power structures within the office. I look around the room. The older guys just look confused. The younger guys are trying hard not to roll their eyes. A small group of women, mostly from marketing and HR, are nodding enthusiastically. I wasn't paying much attention, to be honest. I was thinking about a fuel consumption problem for a client's fleet in the Midwest. To me, this was just another corporate initiative that would be forgotten in 6 months. I was wrong. The changes started small. First, it was the mandatory Monday morning check-in meetings. Everyone had to go around the circle and share their name, their role, their pronouns, and one thing they're grateful for. It was excruciating. 30 minutes of wasted time every single week. The gratitude part was the worst. People trying to one-up each other with saccharine stories about their weekend. I just said my name and job title, and I'm grateful for coffee. Yvonne would always give me a tight, disapproving smile. Next came the mandatory workshops. The first one was on unconscious bias. It was a 4-hour session run by some outside consultant Yvonne hired. The whole thing was a joke. Vague accusations, poorly designed PowerPoint slides with stock photos of diverse people laughing at salads. The consultant kept talking about how a workplace based on meritocracy is often just a cover for systemic prejudice. According to him, my entire way of thinking, using objective data to find the best solution, was part of the problem. I sat in the back with my laptop, quietly fixing a routing algorithm for a shipment stuck in Dallas. I noticed Yvonne watching me for most of the session. She never said anything, but she had this look, like she was observing a lab rat she was planning to dissect. A few weeks later, a new Slack channel appeared. Brave Spaces. It was a channel, moderated by Yvonne for employees to share their experiences and feelings without fear of judgment. It quickly turned into a public complaint forum. People would complain about anything and everything, the temperature in the office, the brand of coffee in the break room, but mostly they complained about their colleagues. It was always vague. Someone on the operations team used a very dismissive tone in an email today. Yvonne would immediately jump in. "Thank you for your courage in sharing this. This is a valid experience. We need to address the impact of harmful communication styles." She was weaponizing feelings, turning subjective interpretations into workplace offenses. The atmosphere in the office started to change. People became wary, cautious. You could feel the tension. Conversations became quiet and guarded. Jokes stopped. I tried to ignore it all. I put my headphones on and focused on my work. My numbers were still excellent. I figured that would protect me. One afternoon, I was eating lunch at my desk, trying to solve a particularly nasty logistics puzzle. Yvonne was sitting with her little clique from HR at a nearby table. I could hear their conversation. They were talking loudly, almost performatively. Yvonne was going on a rant about male toxicity in the tech and logistics sectors. She said that the emphasis on cold, hard data was a symptom of a patriarchal system that devalues emotional intelligence and collaboration. She talked about how men often use logic as a weapon to shut down women's voices and maintain control. She didn't mention my name. She didn't have to. Everyone in the department knew who the data guy was. That was the moment I realized I was on her radar. I wasn't just a neutral employee anymore. I was a symbol of the old way she was determined to destroy. The breaking point came during the quarterly budget meeting. It was a big meeting. The director, all the department heads, and key specialists. Yvonne was there to present her flagship proposal. She called it the Equipath Initiative. It was an ambitious and incredibly expensive plan. It involved hiring a team of dedicated DEI consultants. It proposed a new recruitment policy with strict quotas based on identity groups, not experience or qualifications. It included a reverse mentorship program where senior male employees would be paired with junior female employees to learn from their experiences of the workplace. The whole thing was a Trojan horse for her ideology, and she was asking for a massive chunk of the department's budget to fund it. She gave a very passionate presentation, full of emotional language about fairness and justice. The director was practically sweating. He was terrified of saying no and being labeled a bigot. You could see he was ready to approve the whole thing. He wrapped up the presentation and said, "Great. Thank you, Yvonne. Does anyone have any questions or feedback?" The room was silent. No one wanted to be the one to challenge her. Then he made a mistake. He looked at me. "Sam, you're our numbers guy. What's your take on the projected impact?" I could have just nodded and kept my mouth shut. I should have. But my entire job is about objective analysis. It's what I'm paid to do. I calmly opened my laptop and connected to the projector. I said, "I took a look at the proposal last night and ran some numbers." I pulled up a simple, clean spreadsheet. No emotion, just data. The proposed budget for the Equipath Initiative is approximately $750,000 for the first year, I began. This includes salaries for new hires, consultant fees, and software licenses for the tracking platform. I switched to another tab. I've compiled public data from 5 other companies in our sector that have implemented similar large-scale DEI programs in the last 3 years. On average, they saw a 15% drop in departmental productivity in the first year and a 20% increase in voluntary turnover among their top-performing employees. I could feel Yvonne's eyes burning a hole in the side of my head. I kept going. The turnover is often attributed to senior specialists feeling that career progression is no longer tied to performance. Then I pulled up my final slide. For perspective, That same $750,000, if invested in the new fleet tracking software we've been requesting for 2 years, would generate a projected ROI of over 300% within 12 months. It would directly improve our service for every single one of our clients. I finished with, from a purely operational and financial standpoint, the EquiPath initiative represents a significant cost with a high probability of negative returns. I sat down. The silence in the room was deafening. I hadn't been aggressive. I hadn't been emotional. I just stated the facts as I saw them. Yvonne smiled, a terrifying predatory smile. She looked at the director and said, "Well, thank you, Sam, for that spreadsheet-based perspective. It's good to be reminded that some people can only see the world in terms of dollars and cents. The rest of us are trying to build a better, more human workplace." It was a brilliant move. She reframed my objective analysis as a moral failing. The director, utterly spineless, immediately folded. He started babbling about how the company needs to invest in its people and how some returns can't be measured on a spreadsheet. The budget for Yvonne's initiative was approved. I knew in that moment that I had signed my own death warrant. The retaliation was swift but indirect. A week later, Yvonne's HR department launched a new 360-degree anonymous feedback tool. Employees were encouraged to leave anonymous feedback about their colleagues' adherence to company values. Suddenly, my life became a living hell. I was called into a meeting with Yvonne. The director wasn't there, just her. She had a printed file on her desk. She told me that she had received a significant volume of concerning feedback about me. She wouldn't tell me who it was from. She wouldn't even tell me the specific incidents. It was all vague nonsense. Feedback suggests your communication style can be intimidating to junior colleagues. It has been noted that you often dominate conversations with data, leaving a little room for other perspectives. Several reports mention a gatekeeping attitude towards information, which creates an environment of exclusion. I asked for a concrete example. Can you tell me one specific thing I did that was wrong so I can understand? She just smiled and said, "We're not here to place blame, Sam. We're here to discuss patterns of behavior." It was a kangaroo court. I was being tried for crimes I didn't know I'd committed by accusers I couldn't see. The campaign escalated. One of my junior analysts, a young woman I had personally trained, made a small error in a report. I pointed it out to her privately in a direct message, showed her the correct formula, and told her not to worry about it. Standard procedure. 2 days later, I'm in another meeting with Yvonne. The new complaint. I had publicly shamed a female colleague for a minor mistake, which contributed to a culture of fear. Someone had twisted my private helpful message into an act of aggression. My old work friends started avoiding me. They'd go quiet when I walked into the break room. They wouldn't make eye contact in the hallways. They were scared. They knew Yvonne was targeting me, and they didn't want to get caught in the crossfire. The director started ignoring my emails. When I tried to talk to him about the situation, he would suddenly have another urgent meeting to attend. He had already thrown me to the wolves. The final meeting happened on a Thursday afternoon. I remember because it was raining. I got the calendar invite from the director's assistant. Urgent meeting. I walked into his office. He was there, looking pale and uncomfortable. Yvonne was sitting next to him, perfectly composed. She had the file folder on her lap. The director couldn't look me in the eye. He just stared at a spot on the wall behind my head. He cleared his throat and started reading from a script. Sam, after a thorough review process, and considering the feedback from multiple team members, we've come to the difficult decision that your role at Streamline Logistics is no longer a viable fit for our company's forward-facing cultural strategy. I just stared at him. You're firing me. He flinched. We're terminating your employment. It's a strategic realignment. It's not personal." I looked at Yvonne. She had a small, triumphant smirk on her face, the look of a hunter who had finally cornered her prey. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. What was the point? The decision had been made weeks ago. This was just a formality. I asked one question. Is this decision based on my performance metrics or on the anonymous complaints in that folder? The director just stammered. It's a holistic assessment, Sam. We have to consider all factors. Yvonne slid a document across the table, a severance agreement. It offered a decent payout in exchange for my signature on a comprehensive non-disclosure and non-disparagement agreement. They were buying my silence. I signed it without reading. I stood up, pushed the chair in, and walked out of his office without another word. Security was already waiting at my desk with a cardboard box. They watched me pack my few personal belongings, a coffee mug, a picture of my dog, a few books. As they escorted me out of the building, walking me past all my former colleagues who were pretending to be intensely focused on their screens, I saw Yvonne watching from her office window. She was smiling. I was unemployed, with a black mark on my reputation, all because I had dared to challenge her with objective facts. She had won. She had completely destroyed my career, and I had no idea what I was going to do next. The next few months were rough, really rough. The severance money was nice, but it didn't last forever. I started looking for another job right away. I had a great resume, years of experience, a portfolio of proven results. I thought it would be easy. Every interview seemed to go perfectly. I'd nail the technical questions, the hiring managers would be impressed with my work. Then I'd get to the final round, the one where they call your references, and then silence, ghosted. Or I'd get the generic email. We've decided to move forward with another candidate. It happened over and over. I finally got a call from a recruiter I knew, a guy I'd worked with in the past. He was honest with me. He said, "Sam, I don't know what you did at Streamline, but the story out there is not good. The official line from their HR is not a culture fit, but the unofficial word is that you were a problem, abrasive, a toxic influence." Yvonne hadn't just gotten me fired. She had poisoned the well. She had made sure my professional reputation was garbage. I was effectively blacklisted in the industry. For a while, I gave up. I spent my days just existing. I lost a lot of weight. The feeling of injustice was eating me alive. I did everything right. I worked hard. I produced results. I was a good employee. And for what? To be taken down by someone who valued ideology over competence. It felt like the whole system was rigged. After hitting rock bottom, I knew I had to do something. I couldn't get a job at a big company, so I'd have to make my own way. I started reaching out to small businesses, startups that couldn't afford a full-time logistics expert, but were bleeding money on inefficient shipping. I offered to work as a freelance consultant. No long-term contract. Just pay me a flat fee to analyze your system and give you a plan to fix it. The first gig was for a small e-commerce company that sold custom furniture. Their shipping costs were killing them. I spent a week living in their data. I found the bottlenecks, restructured their warehousing, and negotiated better rates with a regional freight company. I saved them 40% on their shipping expenses in the first month. The owner was so grateful he became my biggest advocate. He started recommending me to everyone he knew. Word of mouth is a powerful thing. Slowly, I built a client base. I was my own boss. I set my own hours. And I only had one metric for success: results. I was happier than I had been in years. Around this time, I started hearing things about what was happening back at Streamline Logistics. A few of my old trusted colleagues had reached out, the ones who had been too scared to speak up before. They told me the place had become a nightmare. Yvonne's Equipath initiative was in full swing. Competent people were either leaving or being pushed out. replaced by new hires who ticked the right demographic boxes but had no idea what they were doing. Productivity had plummeted. The mandatory emotional sharing circles were now happening twice a week. My old department, the one I had built into a finely tuned machine, was a mess. Deadlines were being missed constantly. Their biggest client, Megacorp, the one I had single-handedly saved, finally got fed up. They pulled their multi-million-dollar contract. That was a huge blow to the company. The financial reports were starting to look ugly. Meanwhile, my own little consulting business was growing. I ended up getting a long-term contract with a smaller, more aggressive competitor to Streamline. Let's call them Apex Solutions. Apex was the anti-Streamline. They were lean, hungry, and obsessed with efficiency. They didn't care about my past. They just saw the results I was getting from my clients. They hired me to rebuild their entire logistics division. I had a blank check and full autonomy. I handpicked my team. I called up some of the best people who had left Streamline, the ones who were tired of Yvonne's nonsense. They jumped at the chance to work in an environment based on merit again. In less than a year, we built the most efficient logistics operation in the region. We were poaching clients left and right, including some of Streamline's former customers. I wasn't trying to get revenge. I was just focused on doing good work. But I admit, it felt good to be winning. Then, the big news dropped. The parent company that owned Streamline Logistics, a massive, faceless private equity firm, finally noticed how badly their investment was performing. They did what big, faceless firms do. They decided to clean house. They also saw the rapid growth of Apex Solutions, our small, agile company that was eating Streamline's lunch, so they bought us. The email went out to everyone. Apex Solutions was being acquired and merged with Streamline Logistics to form a new, stronger entity. A new CEO was being brought in from the parent company to oversee the transition. This new CEO was a legend in the industry, a ruthless, no-nonsense guy whose only goal was to make a company profitable. He was known as the Fixer. He'd come in, fire half the management, and turn the company around in 6 months. I wasn't sure what this meant for me. I was just a director at the company being acquired. I figured I'd probably be out of a job again. Then I got a call from the new CEO's personal assistant. He wanted to meet with me, just me. I went to the meeting in the corporate headquarters downtown. The CEO was an older guy, impeccably dressed. He didn't waste time with small talk. He had a file on his desk with my name on it, and another one with Streamline's performance data. He looked at me and said, "I've read your file. I've seen what you did at Apex. I've also seen what happened to Streamline's numbers the day you left. I don't care about the HR drama. I care about this." He tapped the financial charts. He offered me a job. Executive Director of Operations for the entire merged company. He wanted me to run the whole show, to take what we built at Apex and implement it across the entire organization. He said, "Your first task is to trim the fat. Anyone who isn't contributing directly to the bottom line is gone. I'm giving you full authority. You answer only to me." I accepted. The first week was a blur of meetings and audits. I fired my old boss, the spineless director. He barely said a word. He just packed his box and left. I went through every department, looking at budgets, performance metrics, and personnel files. And then I got to the HR department. I saw the budget for Yvonne's Equipath initiative, the absurd amounts of money spent on consultants, workshops, and useless software. I saw the employee turnover rates, the exit interviews from top performers, who all cited a toxic culture of mediocrity. It was all there, in black and white. The data told the whole story. My assistant came in and told me my schedule for the next day. It included a series of one-on-one introduction meetings with the senior staff from the old Streamline team. And there, on the list, for 10 a.m., was her name, Yvonne. The meeting was scheduled to take place in my new office, the one that used to belong to the director. The next morning, I was sitting at my desk when my assistant buzzed me. "Yvonne is here for your 10 a.m. meeting." I said, "Send her in." I turned my chair around to face the window, looking out over the city. I heard the door open and close. I heard her footsteps on the carpet. She said in a confident, chipper voice, "Good morning. You must be the new—" I let the sentence hang in the air for a second. Then I slowly swiveled my chair around to face her. The look on her face was worth everything I had been through. It was a perfect sequence of emotions. First, cheerful confidence, then confusion, a flicker of recognition, dawning horror, and finally, pure, unadulterated panic. Her professional mask completely shattered. Her mouth hung open, the color drained from her face. I just sat there, silent, looking at her. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just maintained a perfectly neutral, professional expression. She finally managed to stammer out, "Sam, what? How are you here?" I gestured to the chair opposite my desk. "Please, have a seat, Yvonne." She sat down, looking like a ghost. I picked up a file from my desk. It had her name on it. I opened it. "I've been reviewing the performance of the HR department over the past fiscal year," I said, my voice calm and even. "Direct expenditures on DEI initiatives under your leadership totaled approximately $1.2 million. During the same period, voluntary turnover of employees in the top performance quartile increased by 40%. I turned a page. The loss of the Megacorp account, which has been directly linked in exit interviews to service failures stemming from your recruitment policies, resulted in a projected revenue loss of $15 million. I looked up from the file and made direct eye contact with her. "You championed a culture that prioritized feelings over facts and ideology over results. This company is no longer interested in that business model." She started to speak, a desperate string of HR buzzwords. Psychological safety, inclusive environment, building trust. I held up a hand to stop her. The new corporate culture is based on a single principle: merit. Your performance, when measured by any objective metric, has been a catastrophic failure. I closed the folder and pushed it to the side of my desk. "As of this moment, your position as senior HR business partner has been made redundant. Your employment is terminated, effective immediately." She just stared at me, speechless. All the power, all the smug certainty she had wielded for so long was gone. I pressed the intercom button on my phone. "Security, please come to the executive director's office." I stood up and walked to the window, turning my back on her. I looked out at the city, at the trucks moving on the highways below. It was a system, a complex, logical system, and I was in charge of making it work. I heard the door open behind me. I heard the quiet, firm voice of the security guard. I heard her being escorted out. I never looked back.